Okay, so hello everyone again. I'm gonna be talking about kind of the last style or the last type of file for Solidworks, and that's the drawing file. So you should be familiar now with kind of making parts of several different shapes and building assemblies, and now we're gonna move on to the last part, is kind of communicating those parts and assemblies through a drawing. Okay, so there's these standard sheet sizes, and there's this international standard organization, which is ISO, which is more in Europe and most places outside of the U.S. And then there's these ANSI formats, which are more of the North American standard. Um, and so we can select something that's close to like an 8.5 by 11 roughly. We can even do custom sheet size, but that's not going to give us any of these borders or anything. And so if you're working in a company, you might use this format with all these different things. But for most of your time here at school, this is going to be a little bit overkill and end up just actually taking a lot of wasted space that you'll never actually use. So let's start by kind of modifying this. So first, one thing I like to do is go to the sheet and properties, and we've talked about how you should use the third angle projection, which all it does is it describes the kind of the layout of the orthographic projections. And you can put a name on the sheet, and you can change the scale, and you can change these sizes. But so now I'm going to go to our 8.5 by 11 roughly. And the nice part about making it 8.5 by 11 is that the scale will be true after you print it on an 8.5 by 11. Whereas if you use some larger sheet and scale it down, you're not going to be able to use the scale because this scale doesn't take into account any scaling done while you're printing. So now we're going to put the sheet of what we're mostly going to be printing on, and after we apply these changes, if we do it now, we'll still have this. So we can right click and we can kind of edit some of the sheet format, and that'll allow us to do this. So you'll see there's just some standard writing, and then there's these which they're actually linked to properties. So this one right here, linked to properties. So they're actually, it's linked to the current document essentially. And so uh, we can change some of this. So let's do annotation. Opens up sheet format. So we're going to come here to this automatic border. And to be honest, you have this grid essentially of letters and numbers, and so that you could say, oh, see A6, that'll tell you to look down in here. But I mean, it's an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. There's not that much on it. It's a little overkill. So for this automatic border, we can click through, and we can get rid of these zone dividers, and we can get rid of columns and rows. It's nice to have a border around the outside, about a 1/2 inch all the way around. So that's nice. That's about the extent that we want. So this also too has a lot more lines than we necessarily need. So I usually just kind of go through and I'm going to get rid of. And most of the ones I'm not going to use. Should probably include almost all of these horizontal lines. Just delete those. And for the most part, you're not going to have a bunch of different people checking your thing. So I, for the most part, will get rid of most of these. And you can just kind of go through selecting. Some of the stuff I might want is, our name, date, maybe the material, maybe the scale. So it says finish on it, but we don't necessarily need the finish. This is just another writing. So let's these lines we can kind of begin to drag around. These two are kind of connected. So I'm actually going to take this, move this a little bit lower, move it on this side, and I'm going to move this one on this side. And we can even say, okay, this one we want it to be horizontal. So that checks out. Maybe we want this one too. It's going to kind of come here and here. So we'll essentially have two things that we can horizontal. Essentially have a top and bottom, and then we'll just maybe block it off in a couple sections. So I'll give myself kind of eight things I want to tell the reader, you know, or whoever I'm giving this to, you know, machinist on campus or fellow student to make. And then you can see we can also make all this stuff quite a bit bigger then too, which is nice. So I usually get rid of these. So here we go. So, you know, and so one. So we can screw them in a little bit. So, I don't know. Might have our title here. So, might call this like, you know, we're gonna do the flashlight base, and pretty much you always work in all caps. So let's do this 18 or something like that. That seems reasonable. And as you can see here, it's also, we might go like material 16, which is, you know, aluminum. Here, but we're not going to have scale. I want to make this a little bigger too. So like 18. What was it? It's good to be consistent. So we did 18 here. Let's make this 18. Okay. Maybe have a box with our tolerances. Dimensions are in inches. We're probably gonna, like 0.01. See if it fits. So this one might have to be a little bit smaller, just so we put a bunch in it. So we have this, and then put this date down here, so 18, so stay here, you know, May 5, 2018, that, and then maybe over here, have my name, and maybe I'll have like, you know, even put the Cal State logo and stuff if you want. So Cal State LA. Whoops. Cal State LA. Chemical engineering. Yeah, maybe I want to do that. Okay, yeah. Okay. So yeah, so I kind of cleaned up our cleaned up a little bit our our border, and this is called the title block. So you have something just for notes down here. And so now let's do the rest of the drawing. So what we're going to do is have to bring in our parts that we want. And so I think, let's see here, maybe it's in flashlight parts. Okay, so I said sorry for that, I just had to make sure my flashlight was here. So it's going to bring it in, and you can see, you know, these two views are kind of redundant because of the circular symmetry, so I can probably delete this. And you can even rotate the views if you want, so, you know, if I wanted this view to be side or top, you know, we could do that. Or I can do rotate view and rotate it by 90, let's say. So we could do this. So it's all in your preference for how you want it to look. So bring this down. So, you know, maybe we want to change the scale, so we can even remember we could right click on the properties here, and the scale, instead of 1 to 1, maybe we want it to be, you know, 2 to 1, so that we could see things a little bit better, although we're kind of running out of room here a little bit. So maybe what we'd want to do then is this view, and then what we can do is we can project a view off of this. So we could do something like this. So this would give us plenty of space to draw on. You can also, too, if you want to insert like a model view, just click through on this one, and you want it to be, let's see here, so click on this view, and we can make it like isometric if we wanted. So that's a pretty nice isometric, but you can also take this one and you can do a projected view off of it like this. Projected view off of it like this. So there's a couple ways to add maybe an isometric view there. So the most important part now will be to begin to dimension your part. So you can try and import dimensions, essentially. And it'll give you a start, but you can see it kind of has stuff all over the place. It might not necessarily be in the best order. Or you can kind of start by dimensioning things, and so I think, like, for example, this would be a good view to dimension the radius in of the part. Maybe we don't want, you know, this type of dimension. Maybe we want something more like this, and maybe we want the text to be vertical. So let's see if I can figure out how to get this thing to look a little bit better. So we can do smart dimension. So, and we want diameter, linear, there we go. For some reason it's forcing us So let's just be smarter than SolidWorks. If we can. So maybe if I click. There we go. Put the 1 inch up there. So you see there's a couple different ways. Let's see if it automatically chose this one. Yeah, and up and down. So that's a nice way to do this one because you can really see it in that picture. And then I can select this line. And I don't normally like to have to turn my head sideways when I'm trying to make something. So I like to turn these. So maybe do this one. Doing this to here would be redundant. So we don't necessarily need to do that. For example, we don't want to put it on the drawing or anything like that. We could also too, with this one, get a smart dimension. We could show the hidden line so you could see that there is a hole for the battery on the inside. The other thing you'll notice is these things are kind of gray, so we can come to the kind of system options, color, and then in these it should be dimensions. Let's see here, maybe non-imported. Make these black. See if that does the trick. Yeah, so now it's all black, which is nice. And then, so there's a couple other things that we'll need to dimension on here. Like this whole call out. So it's because this is thread, it won't let us do a hole, so we're gonna have to manually do that one. It'll let us do it like this, but it's not giving us the thread on there, which we actually want. But the other stuff we have to dimension will be all these lengths essentially. So let's go from here to here. Actually, we can start with the whole thing here, here, 2 inches. You usually want to put the biggest ones on the outside, and then you can kind of stack them a little. And here, there, here to there. So you know all of these dimensions, and we can, if we want, we can take kind of a balloon off of here. Let me put this below. You don't want too many of these lines crossing, so I might either put it in this one, but let's just do it for the sake. Technically, you can kind of have these extension lines. So we're going to edit this one, so we want nothing there, and then here we just want some text. So we could say 916 18 UMF. So we could kind of specify the thread there. And you don't want to really dimension to hidden lines. So one way to do that on this is to potentially add like a section view. So we want it to be up and down. So we could add a section view, check, and we could put it up here like this. Obviously it's a little bit big, we have to start moving these things around, so I move this down a little bit, this tighter. You see there's infinite number of ways to make these drawings. And I wouldn't really want that necessarily, so let's put this back here. Bring this down. So you can see this says A and A. Bring these out a little bit. Bring this out a little bit. So you don't want these things to go crossing over each other. So we got this, and now we could bring this up a little closer. So now we could dimension to these object lines instead of to a hidden line, although it's a little bit of a waste. I'd probably, honestly, if I was giving this to someone, I might just dimension to the hidden line in this case, since there's only one, and it's probably not worth making a whole section view of. So there's like a small section, and so I mean, really the key here is you want to think about how can you best communicate to whoever's going to be using this drawing what they need to know, you know. So if they're going to be making it, you should be communicating that, and you know, if someone's making it, these aren't quite maybe the right dimensions to give, because they're going to be probably using a lathe to get rid of, you know, this material and get rid of this material, so they probably actually care more about the distance from here to here, and so that they don't have to subtract these two. But let's see here. The other thing we're missing is distance from here to here. That I think 0.41, and again, just so you don't have to turn your head all the time when you're looking at drawings. And then if we wanted to, we could even do like a detail view. Sometimes if you're doing you know, something really particular, you know, you might do like a detail view B here, so they can see the thread. You don't want to put that on the drawing, but you can see it's a scale of 4 to 1 here. You wouldn't let these overlap, and you know, obviously I probably wouldn't actually do the section or the detail view here, but just so you know how to do them. So let's delete this, yes. So the only thing I might include here would be an isometric view, and I might, for this one, it seems a little big, I might use a custom scale like 1 to 1 or something, just so they could see it. And sometimes with these, you know, if you want to, you could shade it even, and that's just so you can kind of get an understanding of the part easily. So some other things you can do, so let's say you don't want to have to remake this base sheet every time. You could do File, Save Sheet Format here, and we're just going to call this my missiles the JCB format for now, and I'll save it here. And so, you know, here's a, you know, roughly someone could make this part. I'm probably missing a couple of dimensions now, you know, dimensions of this hole, and let's see, I didn't really say anything about this radius. You could figure out the information about the chamfer, but for the most part you can make this, barring a couple dimensions I might be missing. So I'll let you figure out a couple of those. Auxiliary views, sometimes if you have a part that has like a face that's at a weird angle with another face, you might like click and you could give an auxiliary view off of that face, and so that you could show it clearly. That's more of a specialized thing, but there is a way to add kind of views from other directions than just isometric or the orthographic. If, let's say, you have, you know, two faces that aren't at those angles and you really want to show something on one. So let's open up a new one, and let's see what happens when we try to make this for an assembly. So now hopefully JCB is at the bottom, which is nice now, so I bring this in every time. And we're going to browse, and you probably at this point made your engine. So I think this is this assembly. Oh, got a little confused. Put a couple of different things together. One sec. Okay, so I fixed that file. So I'm going to bring it in here. So let's bring in a model view of this assembly. I probably want like an isometric view, something like that. And it seems a little bit small, so maybe our sheet scale should be like let's do like 1 to 2 maybe, a little bit bigger. So when we're you know, drawing an assembly, we typically don't dimension it unless you need to kind of dimension from, you know, how the thing goes together from here to here. But I think for this one, it's, there's only kind of one way in which it goes together. So if you show it, it's fine here. But the one thing you typically want to do that you wouldn't typically do on a part drawing is would be to add a bill of materials. So let's see here. I can figure out where this bill of materials is. Probably tables. Bill of materials. So I'm going to select this drawing. So it's going to pull out all the parts on this. I'm going to put it right here. So, we might not need every column here. Let's see. So you can see the different parts. We have one of each and it's different part numbers. And then we'll probably balloon the different parts. So okay, that's the connecting rod. That's the cylinder right here. That's the piston, and that's the crank. So you probably do something like this so that when you're building an assembly, you can see the different item numbers. Those are here, and they can see how many of each they need and what they are. So they're going to put it together. And of course, I didn't do it, but if they needed information about how to put it together, we're just going to do a model view of the assembly. And this is obviously like 1 to 5 right now. So we're going to delete this. Yes. Make this 1 to 2. So you could always add some dimensions about how it goes together. Distance between here to here. Distance from here to here, something like that. And then also, in addition, show an isometric and show this bill of materials. So I just want to quickly mention, for doing assemblies, you typically have the bill of materials, balloon numbers, and if there's different ways in which they could sit together, this one they kind of all have to sit at this one spot. If they sit like this, then you can give dimensions about how you should put it together. So that'll kind of end what I had to say about the basics of making drawings and changing the sheets. And I hope this will get you started.